01 Knowledge of the conscious self in the body. Thinking and Destiny Noetic Destiny 01 Knowledge of the conscious self in the body. The noetic destiny of the majority of human beings is the condition of the noetic atmosphere of the human, Fig. VB. That condition includes the amount of knowledge of the conscious self in the body available to the human, the much or little of the light of the intelligence present, the quality of that light as attachable to objects of nature, and the consequences of all this to the human. Human beings think of destiny as physical only, yet their noetic destiny dominates the other three kinds. Noetic destiny may not seem as obvious as mental destiny. It manifests through physical destiny chiefly as the generative power and the use to which it is put. Through psychic destiny as the ability or inability to control one's passions and desires. And through mental destiny as the power or lack of power to do real thinking. It can be seen in physical things because human beings let the light of the intelligence go into nature through the action of the four senses and through the generative power. And the physical results are the only indications that they are able to notice. Noetic destiny in the present stage of human beings appears chiefly as their troubles, their afflictions, their diseases, though the immediate cause of all these is the psychic part of the triune self, the doer, and the thoughts which it generates. Noetic destiny is a background in the noetic atmosphere, rather than an active force. When there are enough people who think along these lines, their thoughts will be exteriorized in words according to the genius of the language, and a vocabulary will be made. In the meantime, terms are here used which can be taken in a sense approximating the unknown things named, such as the triune self, its noetic atmosphere, the knower as the noetic part of the triune self, the noetic breath, the noetic world, and the light of the intelligence. 02. The noetic world. Thinking and Destiny Noetic Destiny 02. The noetic world. Knowledge, which is the permanent result as accomplishment in the noetic atmosphere coming from the thinking of the human, is stored in the noetic atmosphere of the human. It depends upon thinking and cannot come without it. Thinking that brings knowledge into the noetic atmosphere and strengthens the powers of that atmosphere is such thinking as that on the origin, nature and destiny of feeling and desire as the doer, and on its relation to the triune self and to other doers. But thinking selfishness, greed, lust, meanness, hypocrisy, lying, dishonesty and ingratitude, creates thoughts which lead away from the knowledge stored. Be the doer's knowledge much or little, it is acquired only through thinking with the mind that it uses and so must be reached through the mental atmosphere. It cannot be gotten through actions, feelings, emotions, ecstasy or trances. Knowledge of the conscious self in the body can come only as the result of active thinking. This knowledge is of the intelligent side of the universe and is stored in the noetic world. This world is in but is not of the light world, which belongs to the nature side. In the light world the beings are all, from the highest to the lowest, devoid of intelligence, except for what they get from human doers. On the intelligent side there are no worlds in the sense of the worlds of nature matter. On the intelligent side are triune selves. The term noetic world is figurative like scientific or literary world. The noetic world is a world of knowledge and is a name for the common part of the noetic atmospheres of the knowers of the triune selves in the earth sphere. The human beings of these triune selves are different from each other. But there is a part of the noetic atmosphere of each triune self that it has in common with all other triune selves. There is a oneness among triune selves. That common part is here called the noetic world or world of knowledge. It has an identity and unity in the great triune self of the world. The great triune self of the world is the triune self of the Supreme Intelligence, and has to it a relation similar to that which exists between a triune self and its intelligence. The noetic world is the storehouse of the knowledge of all triune selves in the earth sphere, and this knowledge is available to every triune self. In the noetic world is the knowledge of everything concerned with the earth sphere, the earth crusts that have been and the present earth crust. With their matter, the forces that act through them, with the units of the elements in the Earth's sphere and the laws by which they work. It also contains knowledge of gods, elemental beings and races, past and present, of the continents and races of the physical Earth, its fauna, flora and structure, past and present, of the makeup of the exterior and interior sides of the Earth crust, of how the stars and other bodies beyond the physical Earth are produced, continued, and changed, of the nature of sun and moon and their functions and of times and their measurements. All this is knowledge of nature matter. Moreover, the knowledge of the origins and nature of all triune selves, the manner of their progress and their final destiny and the relation that the light of the intelligences has to their triune selves and to the Earth sphere, is contained in the noetic world. There is no noetic destiny in the noetic world. In that world, therefore, is the treasure of knowledge of all that is or touches the matter, forces and beings in the four worlds of the Earth sphere. 03. Self-knowledge of the knower of the triune self. Thinking in Destiny Noetic Destiny 03. Self-knowledge of the knower of the triune self. The knowledge which a human acquires is available to him only during that life, except for a small portion, the essence of that knowledge, which is assimilated and stored up by the doer in the body. The knowledge which the doer thus acquires through its many human beings, often assists the present human being. In a crisis and even in ordinary affairs of trade and work, a human then finds that hidden knowledge of his doer coming to his help. On moral questions, this hidden knowledge reveals itself through rightness and speaks as conscience. This knowledge makes a human responsible. It is his noetic destiny and makes physical destiny. Self-knowledge of the knower of the triune self is always certain, be it much or little, and it leaves no doubt. It leaves no room for thinking, because it is the summation in which thinking has found its completion. Self-knowledge of the knower may come to the doer also as intuition. Intuition is a definite and certain knowledge concerning a subject that has a relation to the doer. Intuition comes through the thinker and gives to the human information and an understanding of a superior kind. The understanding is a live understanding, and because it comes from self-knowledge of the knower is not subject to argument. Intuition is not a feeling, not an instinct, not a prejudice or a preference. It is impartial, it does not come to everybody, and those to whom it comes do not usually mention it. Intuition is tuition by one's self from within. Knowledge of the conscious self in the body comes to some unexpectedly, not as definite intuition and not as conscience, but as confidence and as a general aid in accomplishing a plan. This is noetic destiny of the human. According to the purpose for which one uses this assistance, he closes or opens himself as a channel for further contact with self-knowledge of the knower. If he will not have anyone but himself benefit by the contact with that aid, he closes himself as a channel and shuts off the aid. If he is willing to share the advantages, he keeps himself open and may even make better contact. The more he is willing to share without restrictions, the more he receives of this knowledge, from which most people shut themselves off because of their selfish desire. As it becomes more evident to him that there is an inner source, he will be led by it to think about it, and so he opens the way to the source, which is by exercise and discipline of his thinking, until this becomes a thinking without attachment, which does not create thoughts. Thus a doer may eventually have in its waking state access to the noetic world. 04 Conscious self-knowledge is available to the human. Thinking in Destiny Noetic Destiny 04 Conscious self-knowledge is available to the human. An aspect of noetic destiny is the amount of light of the intelligence present in the noetic atmosphere and available to the human. An intelligence lends to its triune self a certain amount of light, so that the doer may use it to educate itself and to go through the experiences necessary to acquire knowledge of the conscious self in the body. At times the intelligence loans more light, at times it withdraws light, according to the use which the human makes of the light loaned to him. As the human acquires knowledge of the conscious self in the body, he receives more light. The noetic atmosphere shows by a record how much light has been received, how much has gone out into nature, how much the intelligence has withdrawn, how much remains in the atmosphere, what has been done with the light that went into nature and where in nature that light is. The record in the noetic atmosphere of the human is noetic destiny. The condition of the noetic atmosphere is the record. It shows itself in the mental atmosphere, in the psychic atmosphere, and in the physical body. Another aspect of noetic destiny is the quality of the light in the noetic atmosphere. The light, when in the noetic atmosphere, is not attached to objects of nature, but is attachable or non-attachable. The attachable light will go out into nature. The light which is unattachable is light that has gone out many times and has at last been made unattachable so that it can never again be bound to desire and sent into nature. It is light that has been freed by the action of desire with rightness and reason, freed from desire by desire. The atmosphere shows to what uses the light has been put in the doer itself and in nature and how it has been made unattachable. There is in the noetic atmosphere of the average human little light that has been made unattachable. This shows itself in the actions of men, who go through the same experiences over and over again, without learning anything, without changing their positions as body doers, without the desire to free themselves from nature, without the desire to look into the light. Noetic destiny is recondite. It is not visible as is physical destiny, nor manifest as is mental destiny, but there are physical facts which are immediately and above all others connected with noetic destiny and are therefore indications of it. 05 The test and trial of the sexes. Thinking in destiny. Noetic destiny. 05 The test and trial of the sexes. The scarcity of light in the noetic atmospheres of human beings is because of happenings, long years ago, when the doers now in human bodies were in perfect bodies and were conscious as doer parts of triune selves, in the realm of permanence. For each triune self to be qualified to be one of the government, and to govern the world of time and the destinies of the nations of human beings, it was necessary for its doer part to take and pass through the trial test of the sexes for balanced union of feeling and desire. The test was that the doer should temporarily divide its sexless body into a male body and a female body. That the desire of the doer be in the male body and the feeling be in the female body. That the feeling and desire minds should think in unison, and be uninfluenced by the body-mind, which could function only as or for the body senses and would try to make the desire and feeling of the doer see itself as in two bodies instead of as the active and passive aspects of the doer. As a doer passed the test, the temporary male and female bodies merged and were again the perfect body, but were now permanently balanced in one permanently sexless body. And the desire and feeling were inseparably welded in balanced union, by the body-mind being subject to the desire and feeling minds thinking in union. Each of the doers now in human bodies failed to pass that test. Their body-minds influenced the desire and feeling minds to think of themselves as bodies until these consorted. Then the conscious light was withdrawn by their thinkers and knowers, and they were in the darkness of the body senses, and were afraid. They left the realm of permanence, they could not see it. They found themselves in the human world of time, among male and female bodies, subject to death and re-existence. When the bodies died, the doer, feeling and desire, could not re-exist in a male and a female body at the same time. It re-existed in a male body with its feeling dominated by desire, or in a female body where desire was dominated by feeling, there being only one AIA and one breath form. The doer could no longer think of itself as desire and feeling. It was controlled by the body-mind, and the body-mind compelled it to think of itself in the terms and the functions of the sexes, either as a man or as a woman. Here the doers in human bodies must continue to re-exist in bodies until they think of themselves as doers of immortal triune selves, and work their way onward to the realm of permanence by being conscious of themselves as doers of their triune selves and by regenerating their bodies and restoring them to their perfect state in the realm of permanence. The temporary separation, for the test mentioned, of the doer's perfect body into a male body and a female body was effected by a projection in solid, tangible matter by a transfusion of matter from the perfect physical body of the doer. Into this projected body came the feeling of the doer, and the desire portion was in what had been the perfect physical body, which had become a male body. So there were two bodies connected with each other by a magnetic tie, which served as a bridge connecting the two bodies. The desire in the man body and the feeling in the woman body did not at first think and act as two, as being different and separated from each other. Each saw itself in the other, as though in a looking glass. They felt and acted as one, just as there is reciprocal action in one's hands in whatever one does. 06 Projection of a female form. Thinking in Destiny Noetic Destiny 06 Projection of a female form. The projection of the female form and the transfusion of matter from the perfect physical body of the doer into that form can be illustrated in two ways. First, by a temporary materialization during a spiritistic performance, and, second, by the gestation of a fetus and the birth of the baby. In the first case, there is an exuding or issuing of an astral or radiant form from the physical body of the medium and the development of that form into a transient physical, fleshly body. In this case, where the astral had extended from the medium as the exterior transient body of the materialization, there is a magnetic tie connecting the medium's body with the body materialized into physical form. The tie acts as a bridge and is similar to the umbilical cord for the transmission of the material or life force from the body of the medium to the body of the materialization. In the second case, during placental development, where a human body is being prepared, the transfusion is from the mother directly into the fetus. The umbilical cord is as the magnetic tie. At birth the cord and the placenta are cast off, independent circulation in the baby is established by its own breath, and individual existence begins. These two examples may suffice to illustrate how the transfusion of life matter from one body to another can be conducted and maintained for a given period. In the case of a medium, the transfusion is usually the projection of a human form and the transfusion of living particles into that form to give it solidity, and illustrates after a fashion how the female body was extended from the perfect body and built up, and the two bodies were connected by the magnetic tie. And the disappearance of the materialized form at a séance shows how the projected female form was reabsorbed into the original perfect body. That would have happened with every doer if, after its sexless body had been altered into a male and a female body, they had not consorted. The feeling and desire in those bodies would have been adjusted and balanced in perfect union, and the two bodies would have reunited as the one sexless perfect body. But, by consorting, they severed the magnetic tie. Then the sexual organs formed the tie or bridge between the man and woman bodies. When the psychic tie was broken and the physical tie was made, the bodies were subject to death. Thereafter new bodies could be built only by the physical bridge or sexual tie. Since then the desire and feeling in a man body and the feeling and desire in a woman body seek union of their man and woman bodies, instead of each doer regenerating and having balanced union of feeling and desire in its own regenerated physical body. With those of the doers that passed the test, the projected female body was reabsorbed into the original body. The two bodies were thus reunited as the one perfected, sexless, two-columned body, and the feeling and the desire of the doer were in permanently balanced union in that body. The triune self thereby became a complete triune self, which took its place in the government of the world as an administrator of the destinies of the nations. Some of the doers that failed in the test were of the later third, and are now on the fourth, the present earth, but most of them came out to the crust during the fourth earth. They re-exist again and again as human beings, until their feeling and desire shall have attained to balanced union in a regenerated, perfected physical body. 07 History of the Triune Self. Thinking in Destiny Noetic Destiny 07 History of the Triune Self. The triune self is a unit which the intelligence has raised from the state of AIA to the state of triune self. When it became a triune self, it was under the direct influence of its intelligence and in contact with the light of the intelligence. It was conscious of itself in the eternal, in the light world, in the light of its intelligence, and in the sphere of its intelligence. There was no here, no there, no distance. It was present throughout. There was no past, no future. Time did not exist. For the triune self, there was no beginning. It was with and partook of the everlasting realities of unity, truth, eternity, immortality, justice, honesty, and happiness. The triune self knew them. It can never lose this knowledge, hence they are innate in the doers of human beings. Thinking was unnecessary in the presence of the intelligence. The triune self was in bliss, in everlastingness. It identified itself with the intelligence. It was as though it had always been with that glorious one. The triune self was impressed with its future destiny to become that glorious one, and the future was present. The plan of its development and freedom was unfolded within it as the present. Details as to how and where all was to come did not exist. The triune self was perfect in its knower and thinker parts, but the doer part was not qualified. It had yet to establish its feeling and desire in balanced union. It had to go through the trial of the sexes before mentioned. Some doers passed it and others failed. These became the re-existing doers in human bodies. The triune self has 3 parts, 3 atmospheres and 3 breaths, the noetic, mental and psychic. Each of these 9 partakes somewhat of the nature of the others and may be affected by them. Each of the 3 parts, the doer, the thinker, and the knower, is passive and active. The psychic part is passive as feeling and active as desire. The psychic breath is passive as ingoing and active as outgoing. The psychic atmosphere is passive as receiving and active as impressing. The part, the breath and the atmosphere are passive and active in their relation to each other. The atmosphere is passive to the breath is active to the part, and the part is active to the atmosphere. However, these relations, though usual, are not permanent and are at times reversed. Similar divisions and relations exist in the mental and in the noetic parts of the triune self. These many aspects of the triune self are quite distinct, yet the triune self is one. They act, react, and interact with each other as if they were distinct. And from the standpoint of the doer they are distinct. So the development of the doer is carried on. As heretofore stated, portions of each of these aspects have to do with the human being of the doer. The portions concerned with the human are in his 4-fold physical body. They extend by nervous action through the whole body, but are located in certain organs. The portion of the psychic part in the body is located as feeling in the kidneys and as desire in the adrenals. The passive and active psychic breath and the passive and the active psychic atmosphere work through the psychic part in these organs. A portion of the mental part as rightness contacts the heart and as reason contacts the lungs, and with it are portions of the mental breath and the mental atmosphere. A portion of the noetic part as I-ness contacts the pituitary and as selfness contacts the pineal body. At the death of the body, the doer that was in the body goes with the breath form as the disembodied human through certain states and then returns to the portions of the doer which were not in the body. 08 The light of the intelligence. Thinking in Destiny, Noetic Destiny. 08 The light of the intelligence. The triune self receives light from the intelligence to which it is related. That light comes from the light faculty of the intelligence into the noetic atmosphere of the triune self. The light is not a part of the triune self and never becomes a part of it. It is loaned to the triune self so that by the use of it the triune self may become an intelligence. The light is a conscious light. It is conscious that it is light and is conscious as light. The light, that which is with the intelligence and that which is loaned to the triune self, is one. The light is indivisible, though it appears to be divided. If the doer sends it into nature, the light is still one, no matter into how many different beings and things it has gone, or where it is, or in how weak a being it is, or how much it is obscured by the matter of nature. The light of an intelligence is the same light irrespective of the forms in which it is. It seems to be confined in them, but it really is not. The reality in the triune self above all else, except consciousness, is the light. The light lets things be seen as they are, shows what should be done by the beings in whom it is, leads them to be conscious in further degrees and shows them the power to change, without itself being changed. It bears, as long as it is with the doer, the evidence of the uses to which it has been put by the doer. The fact that the light is there causes these various processes to go on. The light does not act, but it keeps beings in action by stimulating the active principle in them. It does not act, nor does it suffer, nor does it react. Its presence is the cause of all things spoken of as light. Starlight, sunlight, moonlight and earthlight are various functionings of matter made active by the light of the intelligences sent by the doers of their triune selves into nature. Human beings do not know the light as such. The doer is in the sphere of its intelligence and receives a certain amount of light from it. This is the amount the doer should have in order to acquire its education through its human beings. The amount is at times increased or decreased, depending on the thinking of the doers of the human beings, and is the outstanding feature of their noetic destiny. The light so loaned may be sent by the doer into nature and become attached to nature units to which the doer by its thinking ties the light. In nature the light is attached to units, that is, the light is bound up and blended with them and so remains until the doer draws it back. The light allows nature to unfold in every field and it evokes the latent sides and forces in the units. The presence of the light makes the latent energy of nature active. In nature the light sent out through doers is the intelligence often called God, who is supposed to have created the world and to carry it on. The doer is responsible for the light it has sent into nature and must redeem it. Redeemed light goes out again and again until it becomes unattachable to nature. Then it remains in the noetic atmosphere, is of the noetic world and is beyond and free from noetic destiny. 09 The light in the knower of the triune self. Thinking in destiny Noetic destiny 09 The light in the knower of the triune self. The light is clear in all of the noetic atmosphere that does not penetrate the mental and psychic atmospheres of the human. The light is taken into the noetic atmosphere by the noetic breath, and makes the atmosphere conscious in the degree of I-ness and selfness. The matter of the noetic atmosphere has the characteristic that it tends to oneness. This matter is conscious in various phases of I-ness and selfness and is potentially that out of which will be developed the light faculty and the I am faculty, when the triune self becomes an intelligence. In the atmosphere flows the noetic breath, which is the active side of a part of the atmosphere and connects the remaining part with the knower. The knower has two aspects, passively I-ness and actively selfness. From I-ness comes the identity of the triune self, which in the human is manifest as the feeling that it is the same today as through all past years, notwithstanding the changes in the body. Selfness is knowledge. The knower of the triune self is conscious in the highest phases of the degree of I-ness and selfness. The breath and the matter of the atmosphere are conscious in lower phases. In the noetic atmosphere there is neither place nor time. The matter is everywhere at once. The light is throughout, in the atmosphere, in the breath, and in the knower. The light quickens and brings out what is potentially in the atmosphere. That which is in the atmosphere has no direct or special bearing upon the noetic destiny of the human. That which is noetic destiny of a human is light which is in the part of the noetic that is in the mental atmosphere of the human, Fig. EVB. Also light that is tied up in the physical body and light in nature which will be called on by the human. Though light comes in the first instance from the intelligence, some light comes back into the noetic atmosphere from nature when it is reclaimed and some from the mental atmosphere when a thought is balanced and so the light in it is freed, and some when knowledge of the conscious self in the body results from thinking without creating a thought. There is a circulation of part of the light from the noetic into the mental atmosphere, thence by means of thought into nature, and thence back from food and thought into the mental, and thence into the noetic atmosphere. Light is sent by the knower into the mental atmosphere with the noetic breath. Ines sends light to be used in thinking, reason checks the amount that is allowed to go. Selfness sends light to rightness when conscience speaks, and to reason as an intuition. The light that Ines sends becomes diffused in the mental atmosphere. The light that selfness sends remains clear and direct. The noetic breath conveys some of the light to the mental atmosphere, which receives it through its mental breath. When the light is in the matter of the mental atmosphere of the human, it is diffused, modified, dimmed, dulled. The light itself is always the same and has lost none of its character, but it appears in the mental atmosphere as though it were in a fog. This is caused by the matter of the mental atmosphere. In the lower part of this atmosphere, which is the part the human uses to think with and in which the thoughts connected with his thinking circulate and whirl, the light is most fogged and clouded. Whereas the light itself, being of intelligence and being truth, shows in the noetic atmosphere everything as the thing is, the light in the mental atmosphere must be freed from obstacles and interference, and must be held steadily on the subject and brought to a focus, before the light as truth can show what the thing is. The light in its clear state in the noetic atmosphere cannot thence be sent into physical nature. The light in the mental atmosphere is in a state where it can be mixed with desire and so may be sent into physical nature in that portion of a thought which is exteriorized. The presence of the light diffused in the mental atmosphere stimulates the matter of the atmosphere and keeps the mental breath in circulation, and the light circulates with it and allows reason to act through its thinking. The light in rightness is not the light of the mental atmosphere, but is clear light that is sent in flashes from the noetic atmosphere by selfness. No light is in the psychic atmosphere, but there is light in those parts of the mental and noetic atmospheres which are in it. The matter of the atmosphere is conscious in the degree of feeling and desire. The matter is usually dark, heavy, gross, and sluggish. The psychic atmosphere pulls on and weighs down the mental and, in a lesser degree, the noetic atmosphere of the human by those parts of them which pervade it. The light therefore is dimmed in those parts. The noetic destiny is the absence of the light from the psychic atmosphere, from feeling and desire, and from the psychic breath. 10. The light in the thinker and the doer. Thinking and destiny. Noetic destiny. 10. The light in the thinker and the doer. The chief characteristic of the psychic atmosphere is a feeling for and the desiring and rushing after something it longs for, yet fears. That something is the light of the intelligence in contact with the thinker and the knower. The atmosphere is not conscious of the light. It is never quiet, but when impressions from nature, elementals, or desires of other doers enter through the avenues leading from the openings of the body, it is stirred into turmoil. It pulls and it pushes, it sucks in like a whirlpool and it tries to get into everything. It surges in these ways during eating, amusement, dancing, celebrations, sermons, funerals and all trading. The atmosphere is conscious of these, its activities, but is not conscious of why it has them. It has them to get light, the light it once had, but which was withdrawn. The psychic atmosphere is represented in the feeling and the desire of the doer. If feeling and desire could get the light into the atmosphere, the doer would not desire to change its present condition, it would continue to seek satisfaction from nature, it would have a greater intensity of satisfaction because of the light, and it would not advance, and so it would retard the progress of the doer. Because the doer has no light, it is in the dark, it cannot tell one thing from another, cannot form a judgment, but can only feel and desire. When things are pleasant, it tries to hold them and get more of them, when they are unpleasant, it tries to get away from them. Not having discrimination, it does this over and over again. The feeling or the desire is so evident in the human that it seems to be all there is. The doer occupies not only certain nerves of the voluntary nervous system, but also some which belong to the thinker and the knower. No noetic reactions may be felt, and mental reactions are felt but vaguely. If the thinker and the knower are noticed at all, they are interpreted as feeling and desire. On the other hand, psychic conditions, mystic trance states and visions are supposed to be what is spoken of as spiritual. When a human suffers, he usually seeks consolation and hope in religious promises, rather than an understanding of the facts. In the psychic atmosphere, feeling and desire act without the light. 11. The light that has gone into nature. Thinking in Destiny, Noetic Destiny. 11. The light that has gone into nature. Because feeling and desire came into being through light and had their greatest satisfaction while light was with them, and because they can reach completeness only when they are in the light, they want light. The place where they can get it is in the mental atmosphere, in the heart, and principally in the lungs. Feeling cannot get beyond the heart, but desire can, and feeling gets satisfaction from desire. When the psychic atmosphere and the doer become agitated, desire rushes towards the mental atmosphere in the lungs to get light. It cannot get into the atmosphere until it has passed rightness in the heart. Then it is in the mental atmosphere in the lungs. Desire cannot get that light until it compels its mind to think, to gather, and to focus the light on the impression. The light bonds the desire with the impression. The thing which is being created by thinking is a thought and is a new being. In the thought are desire of the doer and light of the intelligence, with which desire could not come into contact in any other way than by this admixture by thinking. The light is not changed, though it is bound up in the combination until the thought is balanced. Desire pushes the thought, and the light guides it toward the first exteriorization and toward every subsequent exteriorization. When a thought is exteriorized, light goes into nature. Some of it is bound up in the thought and some is diffused in the body of the human. When light thus goes into nature, it is attached to units and is part of the light which acts as the intelligence, order, and law of nature. Only a doer can contain or direct light of an intelligence. No physical body, object of nature, or even matter of the light world can deal with the light in the same sense. The light that is in the noetic atmospheres of the doers also illumines the light world, which is on the nature side, and there, though not mixing with the matter, keeps that matter illuminated and in constant action. It also shows what goes on in the light world and what has been done with any of its matter while that matter was in the lower worlds. But the light world of nature does not contain the light. The light is there because of the atmosphere of the triune selves. The light in the mental atmospheres of the doers pervades the life world. This light is the diffused light in the mental atmospheres and is not mixed with desire. Light mixed with desire does not function in this way. It does not get into the life world. When it is mixed with desire and so is bound up in a thought, it remains in that thought in the mental atmosphere. The light in the life world stimulates there the active side of the units and so starts what appears later as life on the physical plane. The light does not illumine the form world, because there is no light in the psychic atmosphere. The bright lights, pictures and colors seen by psychics are matter of the physical world, for psychics cannot see into the form world, as their psychic atmospheres do not carry light. The form plane of the physical world is not illumined by light of the intelligence. Its matter is lit up only in exteriorization of thoughts, not from the light in the light or life worlds. The physical plane of the physical world is lit by starlight coming through human nerves, by sunlight coming through hearts and lungs, moonlight coming through kidneys and adrenals, and earthlight from the sex organs and digestive systems. Starlight is diffused between the stars but is focused by the sun. Starlight, if it could be seen directly, would be seen to penetrate and to bear the other three kinds and to be more powerful than any of them. Sunlight focuses starlight into a steady stream, as thinking focuses diffused light. Moonlight adjusts the sunlight. Earthlight takes in or passes on or throws back the other three kinds of light. All four kinds of light work together in causing a tree, a flower, or an apple to be compacted or to grow. Starlight, sunlight, moonlight and earthlight are not and do not possess light themselves. What is called their light is their property of showing their active side when this reflects light of the intelligence. In this sense, the light of the intelligence, which is self-luminous and self-conscious in the noetic atmosphere, is hidden in the objects of nature which were wrought by the presence of the light. The process is not physical and cannot be coordinated with conceptions of dimensions. 12. The intelligence in nature comes from human beings. Thinking in Destiny, Noetic Destiny. 12. The intelligence in nature comes from human beings. Nature needs light from intelligences, and in the human world of time gets it through human thinking and thoughts, which convey to it light that reaches the human beings from their noetic atmospheres. The light does not go directly into nature. The light from the noetic atmosphere must first go into the mental atmosphere, where it becomes diffused and mixes with desire, which comes into the mental atmosphere from the psychic atmosphere. The light is not in the desire, but is bound to it in a thought. The thought is conceived or entertained in the heart and issued from the brain. In order that the light of the intelligence may go into nature, an act of the body is necessary to exteriorize the thought or part of it. Without an act of the body, the light from the mental atmosphere cannot go out into nature. Nature therefore wants acts by human bodies, to get through them light from intelligences. To that end, nature with the swing of the breath and by an object of sense reaches through the system of one of the senses into the doer, and pulls on the desire, to get the human to perform a physical act. The light of the intelligence goes into nature with thinking and with thoughts, through the openings of the body. Nature seeks light, life, forms and desire, none of which it has. It seeks them as a dry soil seeks water, as fire seeks wood, as negative seeks positive. There is an urge of unfolding and growth by combination in all matter. Without light and without desire, nature must remain inert. With light and desire, nature units combine and advance by life through growth as forms and so become conscious in higher degrees. Nature gets the light from human thoughts and the desire from the embodied portions of doers. Therefore nature pulls constantly on the doers in human bodies to get what will maintain it and advance it. Desire is the driving power within the form and structure of the animal and plant. Desire and the light are in the organisms of nature as instinct, which guides in selecting food, in self-protection and in procreation. Because nature depends upon doers in human bodies for all that it is in bodies and in forms, and for the instinct which guides the actions of the animal and vegetable organisms, and because of the elemental, universal urge for compounding, combining, growth and progress, nature pulls on doers in human bodies. It pulls on the physical plane, on the form plane, on the life plane and on the light plane. Its direct pull is, however, only from the physical plane. It pulls through seeing, hearing, tasting and smelling, and through physical contact. It does this through the four senses and by contacting the feeling and desire of the doer through the fourfold physical breath, the nerves, the three finer bodies and the breath form. Each of the senses works a set of nerves, and all four sets run into and are part of the involuntary nervous system. In this system is the breath form, connected with all parts of the body by means of the three inner bodies. The breath form is to the physical atmosphere somewhat as the doer is to the psychic atmosphere. The form of the breath form is passive, the breath, the active side, is the fourfold physical breath. The breath is not breathing, it is that which keeps the physical body going and makes contact between the four senses and the doer. Impressions of seeing, hearing, tasting, and contact by smell reach the doer by way of the corresponding physical body, the sense, the branch nerves of its system, the involuntary nervous system, the breath form and that breath current of the fourfold physical breath which corresponds to the sense and the body. When physical contact causes feelings, impressions of contact reach the doer by way of the nerve touched, the sense of smell, the nerves of the digestive system, the solid body, the breath form and the earth or digestive breath. The impressions brought in by seeing, hearing and tasting must go to and through the sense of smell to the breath form and the earth breath to reach the doer, before they can be noticed as sights, sounds and tastes. The three senses and the three currents of the breath other than smell and the earth breath, are taken by the breath form and the earth breath to the doer. These three senses and breaths touch the sense of smell, then the breath form and the earth breath in the head, and pass by way of the involuntary nervous system to the solar plexus and thence to the end of the spinal cord, where the earth breath transfers the impression and causes the doer to see, hear, and taste. Thus all sense impressions reach the doer by contact, by way of the sense of smell, the breath form and the earth breath. But in seeing, hearing and tasting the contact is not immediate. In smelling and feeling by touch it is immediate. When a thing is seen, the sense of sight performs a double function. First it goes out towards the particles of radiant matter which are thrown off by every object, and focuses them in the line of vision. Then it transmits the picture they have made in the eye to the nerves of sight. The senses of hearing and tasting work on the same principle. So does the sense of smell. All this is instantaneous. However, when the sense of smell transmits touch, it works on a different principle. It does not focus matter into the line of smelling, but it lets an elemental get into the nerves that are touched. The elemental, when in the nerves, is a sensation to the doer, such as pleasure or pain. Nature uses objects on the physical plane to reach the desire of the doer and the light of the intelligence. Nature can get reactions from the doer and with them what it needs, because a human body is a thing of nature, and is at the same time the instrument of the doer. The four senses, breaths and systems in the fourfold body are in contact with the three parts, breaths and atmospheres of the triune self, and on the other side with the four worlds of nature. The 7 facial and 5 other openings belong to nature, but are used by nature and by the doer. Nature uses them for reaching into the body, to connect with the breath form. The doer uses them to connect with objects on the physical plane. Nature begins her pull through one of her 4 senses and its system. So nature is connected with the doer, above and below, in a human body. There are 2 nerve tracts or cords or tubes in the body, one for nature and the other for the doer, which in the perfect body were connected, Fig. 6d. In the human, the nature tract is the alimentary canal, from mouth to anus. The sense of smell has charge of this tract directly, but the 3 other senses are connected with it, act upon it and influence it. The other tract, the spinal cord and terminal filament, is at present for the doer of the triune self. It reaches from the first cervical vertebra to the tip of the terminal filament at the end of the spine. The doer does not use this tract as it might, but uses organs instead. These organs are the heart and the lungs, the kidneys and adrenals, and the male and female organs, which are go-betweens for the nature tract and the doer tract. The sections of the body are in and connect with the 4 worlds, the head with the light, the thoracic cavity with the life, the abdominal cavity with the form, and the pelvic cavity with the physical world. However, the head is now used for the physical world and the pelvic cavity for the light world. That is so because the knower, the thinker, and the doer as a whole have withdrawn from the body. The brain in the head has been usurped by the portion of the doer that is in the body, and the pelvic organs are devoted to and controlled by the procreative functions in the body. The 4 systems are related to and run through the 4 sections. In this organization, nature pulls on the doer for light, with and through the fourfold breath. The generative system is worked by the elemental functioning as the sense of sight. Through the generative system, the sense of sight can act, indirectly, from the 4 planes of the physical world on nature, and on the 3 parts and the 3 atmospheres of the triune self, and so may get light from the doer for nature. Some of the organs of the generative system, which connect with nature through the involuntary system, are, on the light plane, the eyes and their nerves. On the life plane, the heart and lungs and their nerves. On the form plane, the kidneys and adrenals and their nerves. On the physical plane, the generative organs and their nerves. The triune self may contact organs of the generative system through the voluntary nervous system. The pituitary body may be contacted by I-ness and the pineal body by selfness. The heart and cerebellum by rightness and the lungs and cerebrum by reason. The kidneys are used by feeling and the adrenals by desire. So the triune self may work the generative system through the cerebellum, the heart and the kidneys, and through 3 brains, the cerebrum, the lungs, and the adrenals. It does not do this at present, but through these organs the sense of sight now gets light from the doer for nature. 13. The pull of nature for light. Thinking in Destiny, Noetic Destiny. 13. The pull of nature for light. The pull of nature is exercised from the light plane of the physical world, through the generative system, and by the sense of sight through the eyes in the male or female organs, and especially the testicles and ovaries. By means of the sight acting successively on the planes of the physical world, on the light plane through the eyes, on the life plane through the heart and lungs, on the form plane through the kidneys and adrenals, and on the physical plane through the sex organs, there is finally an action on the breath form by the earth breath as it breathes out through the sex parts. The pull is transferred in the kidneys from the breath form to the feeling of the doer, and then desire, in the adrenals, rushes to the heart. In the heart, if rightness is overcome or does not put up any barrier, thinking is started, which draws light from the mental atmosphere. The heart and cerebellum and the lungs and cerebrum interact, and the brain diffuses the light which is mixed with desire in the heart and lungs for thinking and thoughts. The pull of nature is directly on the doer. Light passes out in the thoughts as they are issued from the brain, and as they are exteriorized in acts, objects, or events. Or especially when there is a sexual spasm, the light leaves, being then precipitated by the brain and drawn along the spinal cord to the small of the back and along the kidneys out into nature. The sexual brain, the testicles or ovaries, influences the psychic brain, the adrenals, that influences the mental brain, the lungs, and that influences the noetic brain, the cerebrum. And all this causes the light of the noetic atmosphere to work for nature. Such is noetic destiny at this time. The physical human world of nature has sex and sex organs. The doer has no sex and no sex organs. The breath form, as the form and the breath, is used by the doer as the bridge by which it crosses over to nature and nature crosses over to it. The crossings from all planes are made on the physical plane in a human body and by means of the earth breath. The respiratory system is worked by the sense of hearing, and through that system this elemental can act, indirectly, from the 4 planes of the physical world upon the 3 parts of the triune self and the 3 atmospheres in which they are, and so may get thoughts from the doer and from them forms for nature. The respiratory system uses substantially the same organs on the respective planes of the physical world as does the generative system, namely, on the light plane the ears, on the life plane the heart and lungs, on the form plane the kidneys and adrenals, on the physical plane the generative organs, and the involuntary nerves of each of these organs. The triune self uses the same organs, the cerebellum, the heart and the kidneys, and the same brains, the cerebrum, the lungs, and the adrenals, as when it acts in the generative system. The pull of nature through the respiratory system is exercised from the life plane of the physical world. The pull is ultimately always on the doer, and that draws on the mental atmosphere for light. The sense of hearing cannot pull directly on the mental atmosphere. The sense of hearing acts with the earth breath in the generative parts on the breath form, that transmits a pull, in the kidneys, to the doer in the body, and desire, if aroused, goes to the heart. If rightness is overcome or agrees, mental activity begins there and passive thinking results. In passive thinking there is only a playing of desire in the diffused light of the intelligence. Yet this is enough to carry some of the light into nature. If the passive thinking results in active thinking or in a thought, more of the light is mixed with desire and goes out into nature by speech or by a thought. The stages are as follows. The sense of hearing is on the life plane of the physical world, and after acting on the intermediate planes and organs, acts on the breath form in the sex parts, through the sense of smell and the earth breath. This transmits the pull to the doer, in the kidneys, then desire rushes to the heart. If rightness is overcome or agrees, thinking is started and draws light from the mental atmosphere. So a thought is there generated, and is issued from the brain, or the light goes out by speech through the mouth. The circulatory system is worked by the sense of taste. When nature pulls through this sense, the sense acts from the form plane of the physical world to reach the three parts of the triune self and their atmospheres. Nature uses the sense of taste and the circulatory system to get forms and desire. The thoughts obtained through the respiratory system are the models for the forms, and the sense of taste gets the design, the details, and the desire which fills out the models. The desire is the driving power in the form. The circulatory system uses substantially the same organs on the respective planes of the physical world as does the generative system, namely, on the light plane the tongue, on the life plane the heart and lungs, on the form plane the kidneys and adrenals, on the physical plane the generative organs, and the involuntary nerves of each of these organs. The doer of the triune self has the same organs, the cerebellum, the heart, and the kidneys, and the same brains, the cerebrum, the lungs, and the adrenals, as it has for action through the generative system. The pull of nature through the sense of taste is exercised from the form plane of the physical world. The pull is ultimately made on the mental atmosphere, if the pull is effective. The sense of taste exercising the pull of nature transmits it to the breath, which passes it on to the breath form as the breath passes out through the sex parts. So the pull is passed on to the kidneys where the doer receives it. If there is a reaction, it begins when the desire rushes to the heart, and the thinker receives it. If rightness is ignored or agrees, thinking uses the light diffused in the mental atmosphere, and a thought results. The digestive system is worked by the elemental functioning as the sense of smell. When nature pulls through the digestive system, the sense may act through any of the four planes of the physical world to reach the doer and its atmosphere to get light. Nature pulls through the digestive system and the sense of smell to get food for its bodies. The food builds up, exteriorizes and gives physical bodies to the forms, which nature has received through the sense of taste. The digestive system uses substantially the same organs on the respective planes of the physical world as the generative system, namely, on the light plane of the physical world the nose and its nerves, on the life plane the heart and lungs and their nerves, on the form plane the kidneys and adrenals and their nerves, and on the physical plane the generative organs and their nerves. But differing from the other three systems, the digestive has a special set of organs in addition: the esophagus, the stomach and the intestinal tract, a tract which goes from the light plane, the head, to the physical plane, the anus. The triune self has the same organs, the cerebellum, the heart and the kidneys, and the same brains, the cerebrum, the lungs and the adrenals, as it has for action through the generative, respiratory and circulatory systems, but the triune self does not touch the digestive system with these organs and brains as directly as it uses or contacts the other three systems, because it is not as intimately related to the digestive system. In addition, the doer of the triune self touches the digestive system in two organs, the stomach and the liver, but it does not touch it in these organs as immediately as it touches the other systems. The pull of nature through the digestive system is exercised from the physical plane of the physical world. The pull ultimately draws on the mental atmosphere if rightness is ignored or consents, and the pull of nature becomes effective. The sense of smell, in order to exercise the pull for nature, reaches from the light plane of the physical world through the nose, from the life plane through the heart and lungs, from the form plane through the kidneys and adrenals, and on the physical plane through the urinary tract, and the anus at the end of the digestive tube. The sense of smell transmits the pull to the breath, which passes it on to the breath form as the breath goes out through the sex parts and the excretory ducts. The pull starts at the anus and the opening of the urinary tract and continues up the alimentary canal to the mouth. From the small intestine, the pull is transmitted to the kidneys, where the doer receives it. The pull continues to the stomach, causing various secretions from the organs along the tract, like the pancreas and liver. The pull is transmitted from the kidneys through the involuntary nervous system by the breath to the stomach, where it is felt as hunger. If there is response, it begins by desire rushing to the heart. There, if rightness is ignored or agrees, the doer may by thinking obtain some of the light, and a thought results. The light may pass out in a thought, and if food is consumed to satisfy the pull, some part of the thought with the light in it is exteriorized in the tissue of the body, and other parts return to nature as excrements, which nature uses to rebuild her structure. The pull of nature for the light that is in the noetic atmosphere of the triune self begins by a pull on the breath, and at a time when the breath swings out at the sex parts. When the pull is made through the digestive system, there is an additional pull at the end of the alimentary tube. This special pull of the digestive system is due to the fact that this system is on the physical plane of the physical world, the plane where all worlds touch, and through which the circulation between the triune self and nature is kept up. The digestive system is on the lowest plane, but it is the most powerful of the systems. All worlds of nature come in contact with the atmospheres of the triune self only through the digestive system, that is, through the physical plane. The doer of the triune self depends on its physical body for progress, and this body is of the same plane as the digestive system. The power of hunger compels the doer to furnish physical food, and food, maintaining the body, keeps the doer on the physical plane. The desire for food brings about the complex relations which compose civilization. The power of the digestive system is also shown by the fact that the alimentary tube takes up more space in the body than the other systems, and that the other systems are subsidiary to the digestion and assimilation of food, turning physical nature into skin, flesh, fat, blood, bones, marrow and nerves. The way nature works in all the systems is displayed more openly in the digestive system. There, in the working of peristalsis, it is most readily seen. Peristalsis, the involuntary contractile movements in the organs of the four systems, conveys to nature the material it needs after the material has in it some light. In the digestive system, this response to the pull of nature by the breath is most pronounced. The connection and interrelation between nature and the doer is made by the physical breath, and more particularly by that stream of it called the digestive or earth breath. Both nature and doer work on the breath form through the fourfold physical breath. Nature works on it through its four senses and systems, and the doer works on it through its feeling and desire. The breath form has two aspects, a negative and a positive. The negative is the form, the positive is the breath and the physical atmosphere. The matter of the breath form is refined matter of the four worlds of the earth sphere. The breath form is akin to nature and to the doer, and one side of it is the flowing breath that enables both to make their communication. While the breath form is negative to the breath and the breath positive to it, the breath itself is positive in its outbreathing and negative in its inbreathing. This breath bathes the entire body in its tidal flow, which is imperceptible except where it carries air into and out of the lungs. Imperceptibly, it moves just as much out of the eye, or any pore or any other part, as it does out of the lungs. The physical breath has four currents, namely, the generative, respiratory, circulatory and digestive breaths, and is related by them through the four bodies to the fire, air, water, and earth in the earth sphere. The psychic, mental, and noetic breath streams have to work through the fourth, the current called the earth breath, to reach the doer. When nature pulls, which she must do by one of the four senses, she reaches by means of the ingoing breath with the sense to the sense nerves, and then with the sense through its system to the corresponding current of the breath, and pulls on that when it is positive and flows out with the earth breath current through the sex parts into the physical atmosphere. This pull induces an involuntary peristaltic action in the system on which nature pulls, to get out of that system the matter and the light that is mixed and concealed in it. The pull then goes with the breath to the breath form and to the sex parts and the other parts which are on the physical plane, and thence to the form plane and the kidneys. 14 Loss of light into nature. Thinking in Destiny Noetic Destiny 14 Loss of light into nature. So nature pulling on the fourfold physical breath causes thereby a peristaltic action in the four systems, by which visible and invisible physical matter, in which there is hidden some light, goes into nature directly. The pull is ceaseless as long as the breath flows, but the peristaltic results do not carry light to nature as regularly, sometimes more, sometimes less, sometimes no light is transferred. Whatever light goes out goes with the outgoing positive breath. Some of it goes through the 12 openings of the body and the pores of the skin. This is either light carried out by matter which has while circulating in the body been impressed by thinking, or it is light which is directly thought out into nature through the sense organs, as through the eye when one looks at a person or thing. The thinking is usually induced by elementals or by thoughts that enter with the incoming breath through the sex openings, the navel and nerve centers in the pelvic and abdominal cavities. The other light that goes out does so in thoughts, when they are issued from the brain and when the person who issues them exteriorizes them by an act. Then the light goes out through the act by sight or by word. Through the bodies of children no light goes out into nature until they become pubescent. The light that is taken in from food is built into the body, particularly the bones and brain, through the thymus gland, the distribution being regulated by the pituitary body. By puberty the thymus gland is absorbed and therefore can no longer act as a stopcock. At puberty a child is connected with its noetic atmosphere. From then on the generative system assumes the function of withdrawing light from the two nervous systems, together with the function of seed production. The main channels through which light is lost into nature are the sex organs. Seeing dress and movements, hearing a voice, especially in song, tasting rich food, smelling odors and touching a body of the opposite sex, all suggest sexual attraction and take hold of and dominate thinking on sex matters. Elementals come in. They are the sexual sensations. A human feels these sensations, but does not feel his feeling and mistakes the elementals he feels and nourishes for his own feeling. The elementals excite him, he acts for them and he allows them to take the light away. 15 Automatics Return of Light from Nature. Thinking in Destiny Noetic Destiny 15 Automatics Return of Light from Nature. The light which a human has sent or allowed to go into nature is returned to the human. It goes out again and is returned again. This outgoing and incoming will continue until the light is reclaimed from all admixtures and attachments and is made unattachable or freed light. Then it goes out no more. Light is returned to the noetic atmosphere of the human either automatically or through self-control. Automatic reclamation is started by a light finder or gatherer, called lunar germ, and is accomplished by the pull of the noetic breath along the nature tract. Reclamation by self-control, which is of 3 degrees, is done by thinking and is aided by another germ, called solar germ, which makes a path along the tract for the triune self for light to travel on. Automatic reclamation of light is the finding and the gathering by the lunar germ of light that has come in with food and the carrying of the gathered light as far as the kidneys, and then the raising of this light to the noetic atmosphere in the head by the psychic, the mental and the noetic breaths. This automatic reclamation can be made only while the light is in the body to which it has returned in food, and after it has been extracted from the food by organs of the 4 systems and by the fourfold physical breath. The light that has gone into nature comes back automatically in food. The light that has gone out in the various ways mentioned never leaves the noetic atmosphere of the triune self. Just as thoughts never leave the mental, and desires, even if they appear as animals, never leave the psychic atmosphere, so the light never leaves the noetic atmosphere. Earth, time and dimensions have no effect upon and are no hindrance to light of an intelligence. The light of an intelligence that is in the noetic atmosphere of its triune self, though it goes out into physical nature, returns thence because that light has an identity. It retains this identity however long it circulates in nature and in however many forms and places it appears there. For the light is a part of an intelligence, which is an ultimate unit, inseparable, indivisible. Special parts of light circulating in nature are summoned into food, to be thence extracted for reclamation. What of the light is so called depends upon the thinking of the human. It may be days, months, years or lives before some of the light is drawn back. But when it is to be reclaimed, any special part of the light will return to the body of the doer that let it go out, though the present human is not aware of the identity and the circulation of the light which his thinking summons to return to the body. Not all the light that is taken in with food is the light of the consumer. Light from other doers is with it and affects those who eat the food. Usually there is something in common between the foreign light and the doer that receives it. Just as the atmospheres of different people intermingle according to quality, so the light that is with food intermingles. Food is of the four elements and is taken in as solids, as liquids, in air and sunlight, and in starlight. The solid food contains the other three, just as the physical world is a precipitation of the other three worlds, as the physical plane is matter condensed from the other planes of the physical world, and as the structure elementals contain the form, the portal, and the causal. The solid and liquid forms of food enter through the digestive system. The airy and some of the fiery foods enter through the respiratory system. But these are only the most apparent ways. Starlight enters also through the eyes and through the skin. With the breath, food from the four elements is taken in directly from one's physical atmosphere, where it is held in suspension. No matter how the food is taken in, it all goes into the digestive system. There the other three systems also work on it. The fourfold physical breath, as it flows in and out of the body, causes a peristaltic action in the organs and tubes of each of the four systems. Each breath causes the peristalsis in its own system, and each sense stimulates the function in its system under that peristaltic impulse. As food is moved in the digestive system, this fourfold stream of the physical breath, each stream acting with its stimulated peristalsis, affects the food. Seeing the food, what is said and heard while eating it, tasting it and smelling it, have a direct bearing on the digestion. The salivary glands add their secretions, the gastric juice is poured out from the walls of the stomach, the liver gives its bile, the pancreas its fluid, and the intestinal digestive glands their secretion. The four senses cause the activity of the juices and of the ferments in them. Thereby proper changes are made in the food, which is turned into chyme in the stomach and later into chyle and becomes ready for absorption and assimilation in the intestines. In the circulation, the kidneys strain the blood and free it from impurities, and the adrenals pour out their secretion, which empowers the red and the white blood cells, keeps the blood and lymph in circulation, invigorates the sex glands and the ductless glands. The respiratory system takes in air as food, supplies oxygen to the blood and eliminates waste matter. This system is the channel through which starry matter flows into the generative system. The seat of the generative system is the pituitary body, and it has organs and branches in all parts of the brain and throughout the body. The generative system is the source of the other three systems. It begins in the fused cells as a point, grows into a line and a surface and becomes a circle within a sphere. The circle separates into the spine and the digestive tract. From some part of the generative system, the allantois is created. That later protrudes through the amniotic sac and the chorion, fastens itself to the wall of the uterus and becomes the placenta. With the placenta are developed the kidneys and adrenals and the heart and lungs, and the circulatory and the respiratory systems are started within the divided circle. The kidneys working through the heart carry on the circulation, which is not independent until the intake of breath after birth. The generative system is the beginning of the physical body from the fecundated cell, the carrier of vitality during the existence of the body, the governor of the nervous systems and of the ductless glands. Seed production in the adult is but one of its functions. During life, the generative system regulates the secretions of the ductless glands, such as the pituitary, thyroid, thymus, spleen, and adrenals. By these secretions, the activities of all four systems are maintained from the pituitary body. The generative system inspirits the ferments and secretions of the organs and thereby causes digestion, absorption, and assimilation. At death, it cuts itself off from the other three systems, which are then unable to function. The generative system makes an extract of 4 grades of radiant matter from all the foods. The first is small in amount and is of radiant matter drawn directly by means of the nerves from food in the digestive system. The second grade is the largest in amount and is radiant matter drawn from food that has passed into the circulatory system. The third grade is radiant matter drawn from food in the respiratory system, and the fourth and most potent grade is elaborated from starry matter that has reached the generative system itself. The four kinds of extracts are elaborated in the testicles and the ovaries for seed and for soil. So that in the seed and in the soil are represented all parts of the body in essence. After the seed and the soil are brought to a certain point, they take on independent life as spermatozoa and ova. From these extracts of starry matter, the generative system makes a tonic tincture and turns this tincture back into the other systems and into itself. The generative system is the ultimate cause of well-being and disease. It gives the tonic tincture to the involuntary and the voluntary nerves, and in this way returns to the digestive, circulatory and respiratory systems that which is made from the extract of the food that passed through them. Because of this tincture, the other three systems are kept going. A life-giving quality can be taken in by respiration and sent to all parts of the body. The blood can be circulated and food can be digested. While these transformations are going on, light is being extracted from the food in its first and subsequent forms. The digestive, the circulatory, the respiratory and the generative breaths work each upon its system in the body to take up a certain part of the food and of the light which is in it and carry the light into the generative system. Finally, the generative breath transfers a portion of the light connected with the food to a lunar germ. Physically, these processes are controlled by the pituitary body. It controls the four systems and the four physical breaths by means of the involuntary nervous system and its involuntary actions. Light going back to the noetic atmosphere goes through the generative system. The four grades of extract have in them light and circulate in the generative system. While they are in the head, the fire current of the fourfold breath can draw light out. The light that moves up and down in the generative system is light that is contained in the radiant matter that was extracted from food. The automatic transfer of light to the noetic atmosphere is made by the generative system naturally to the noetic breath, when there is enough light in the generative system. The noetic atmosphere exercises by means of the noetic breath a continuous pull for its own light. This attempt to raise its light out of the generative system is contrary to the pull which nature makes there for the light. The noetic breath contacts indirectly the generative physical breath, that is, the fire current of the fourfold physical breath, in the head, and there takes some of the light off and back into the noetic atmosphere. There is in the generative system other light which does not come out of nature, but comes through the pituitary body from the noetic atmosphere. Some of this light is sent out monthly in the lunar germ to gather light that has come in from nature. 16. The lunar germ, self-control. Thinking in Destiny, Noetic Destiny. 16. The lunar germ, self-control. A lunar germ is made of matter of the four worlds and has mingled with it essential matter of the four worlds, that is, matter which has circulated so long that it has reached ultimate states of refinement. In addition to the general matter and to this essential matter, a lunar germ bears the impress of the doer and has in it consequently light of the intelligence. The lunar germ is material but invisible. Both the lunar germ and the seed or soil are builders of bodies. With the seed and the soil, the outer physical body is started. With the lunar germ, inner bodies may be built. The spermatozoa and ova are both as female to the lunar germ, and it is as male to them. Only the gross physical elements flow through the seed and the soil, and these are deficient in finer forces of physical matter. A lunar germ supplies these deficiencies and has in it contacts for forces of the other three worlds. A lunar germ must be united to the seed or the soil to produce a body which is not entirely deficient. There ought to be for a proper human body a lunar germ in the seed and a lunar germ also in the soil. In each month after puberty, the generative system produces one of these lunar germs in the pituitary body, Fig. 6a. When the lunar germ has matured and has life of its own, it leaves the pituitary. It starts from there in a rudimentary way, on the right side, and passes down in the involuntary nervous system, having a little light, which attracts other light as it descends in the nerve plexuses supplying the digestive system in the abdomen, until it reaches the lowest point, Fig. 6b. From that point the lunar germ, having crossed over to the left side, ascends along the involuntary nervous system and is carried by the generative breath to the region of the left kidney. During all this time light from food along the digestive tract, light from blood and light from the organs in the body attaches itself to the light in the lunar germ for automatic reclamation. While a lunar germ is in existence and carries light, it may be deprived of some of the light by an outburst of anger or state of jealousy, envy or revenge, but it will always carry some light until the germ is lost. It is lost in outgoing seed or soil. It is not connected with seed or soil until that is precipitated and lost. If the lunar germ has risen with its diffused light to the region of the kidneys, some of that light is taken away by the psychic breath and carried upward in the involuntary nervous system. The psychic breath is made to do this by the mental breath acting within it and obeying the pull of the noetic breath for light. Then the mental breath takes the light and carries it along the thoracic vertebrae to the region of the cervical vertebrae. The mental breath is made to do this by the noetic breath acting within it. The noetic breath takes the light along the pons and the quadrigemina to the pineal body and into the noetic atmosphere. This return of light to the noetic atmosphere is automatic. It is done without the knowledge of the human and usually without the possibility of interference by him, though certain habits like the consumption of alcohol or of narcotics, or excessive sexuality, may hinder even the automatic reclamation. The purpose of automatic reclamation of a certain amount of light is to keep enough in the mental atmosphere to furnish the human with the light necessary to continue living and carrying on his activities as a human. The returning of light from nature goes on continually in every human. Only a certain amount of light is allowed by the triune self to its doer, and the doer must husband and reclaim what light is loaned to it. Without this automatic process of reclamation, a doer would soon be bankrupt and lost. In the noetic atmosphere moves in regular action the noetic breath. This carries light of the intelligence by inspiration into the physical body within the reach of nature, and carries by aspiration the available light from the body, reclaimed from nature, back into the noetic atmosphere. The usual means by which light that has been in food is raised is carriage by a lunar germ. Such a germ is produced once a month, descends on the right side and in a week reaches the region of the solar plexus. In another week it reaches the large intestine and the lowest point of its descent, and during the third week ascends to the kidneys, on the left side. Usually the lunar germ, after it has ascended to the region of the kidneys with the aid of the pull exercised by the generative breath on account of the noetic breath, drops back to the sexual organs and is lost. If it were not for the automatic protection which the monthly germ receives because of the noetic breath, the germ would be lost on its path downward from the solar plexus and would never ascend to the left kidney. The run of human beings would, owing to the pull of nature, become idiots in one life, if it were not for the automatic reclamation of light and the protection which the lunar germ usually receives. For this reason the lunar germ cannot be lost on its path from the head to the solar plexus. From the solar plexus downward and then upward towards the left kidney it is protected. But from the kidney to the head, if it goes there at all, it can go only as the result of self-control. 17. Reclamation of light by self-control. Thinking in Destiny. Noetic Destiny. 17. Reclamation of light by self-control. Automatic reclamation is done by the psychic breath taking light away from the lunar germ, and along the nerves of the digestive system upward from the region of the left kidney and adrenal. The three stages of reclamation by self-control are made by the doer, the thinker, and the knower. Then these three parts of the triune self take off light from the lunar germ and take the germ itself up the spinal cord of the voluntary nervous system. The basis of all four kinds of reclamation is the automatic process by which light is, from food, prepared for the lunar germ. The first stage of voluntary reclamation of light that has come into the body is the recovery of that light due to desire to do right. This first stage has to do with taking light away from the lunar germ, with carrying that light into the blood and to the heart and lungs, and with raising the lunar germ itself from the lowest point to about the junction of the first lumbar and the 12th dorsal vertebrae on the left side along the voluntary nervous system. The first stage of the reclamation of light in the body is done by a human who does not want to be led by nature into doing things he feels that nature wants, who wants to be led into doing what is best for him and who does his duties, not grudgingly, but cheerfully. This relates especially to eating and sex, to the desires for possessions, a name or fame, and for power. If such control is the endeavor of a human, his desire will, without his being conscious of it, take away some of the light which is carried by the lunar germ when it has risen as high as the left kidney. After the psychic and the mental breaths have there taken some light for the noetic atmosphere, in the course of the automatic saving, desire living in the blood may bear some of the remaining light away in the bloodstream. The only time when desire can get this light is during 1 to 3 days of each month when a lunar germ is near the kidneys. The light which desire gets in this way mingles with it, but does not blend. The human does not know about the reclamation, except that he may feel a slight sensation of cheer. In the blood there is bound light and free light. Light which was extracted from the digestive system of the body is bound light and cannot be taken up by desire until a lunar germ has extracted it. Light which desire has brought into the blood is free and remains free, until it is either reclaimed by thinking or until desire unites with the light when the breath meets the circulatory system in the heart and lungs, and only when a thought is conceived or entertained. 18 Loss of the lunar germ. Thinking and Destiny. Noetic Destiny. 18 Loss of the lunar germ. The run of human beings lose their lunar germs within the month, and with the lunar germ goes the light that is in it. But if some light is taken from the germ by the automatic reclamation, that much light is returned by the psychic breath to the atmospheres and is saved for the time. If in addition some light is taken by desire by this unwitting reclamation into the blood, that too is saved when the germ is lost and the remaining light in it goes back into the circulations of nature. The second stage of the reclamation of light that has come back into the body is reached when a human is acquiring self-control by thinking. Pessimism, mysticism, and asceticism are of no use. They hinder rather than help. It is not necessary that one should know anything about the phrases light of the intelligence or reclamation. It is enough that he intends what his inner one, his Father, the light in him, shows to be right. Every human has that light within, though he does not know it as such and does not do what it shows to be right. The second stage requires an attitude of mind akin to optimism, which favors honest and clear thinking, and an enjoyment of the pleasures of life with temperance and without hate, greed, or envy. It requires as to his duties, that he should perform them willingly and understandingly. With the desire that brings the first degree of reclamation and with this attitude of mind, he develops, though he may at times slip back, a mental set that will result in voluntary reclamation. By this mental set his thinking will, without his being conscious of it, extract light that is free in the bloodstream and some of the light that is bound in a thought and will even balance some thoughts. It may also raise the lunar germ along the voluntary nervous system up to the highest of the thoracic vertebrae. Thinking can get light from circulating blood only while it is heart blood and lung blood, and only when rightness reigns and desire is in agreement with it. The seasons in the body present a favorable condition when the solar germ, descending and ascending in the two hemispheres of the spinal cord, is opposite the heart. This occurs twice a year, during the 3 days following the 21st days of June and of December. Getting light in thinking is, however, not restricted to these favorable times. It may happen at any time, provided the lunar germ has risen above the kidneys. From heart blood and lung blood, thinking, by means of the mental breath acting through the respiratory breath, raises light from the heart and from the lungs to the cerebellum and cerebrum. Thinking raises it by an effort to hold light on a definite subject, such as who one is, and who one's knower or father in heaven is. The thinking which reclaims light is intent upon learning from the errors of the past. It is different from ordinary, haphazard, passive thinking. It is even more than active thinking on a matter of religion or philosophy. It is thinking so intended and restrained as to be active thinking on such subjects as immortality, the dweller in the body, truthfulness, chastity, honesty, the purpose of life or service and goodwill. It is active thinking with the definite aim of learning for personal moral and mental advancement. It overrides all obstacles of desires, allurements and weaknesses. It is accompanied by events in the body. When this sort of thinking goes on, it prevents the light circulating in the body from flowing out, and it empowers the lunar germ to take up more light. During this effort, light in the mental atmosphere claims and takes light from the heart blood. When the blood light becomes mental light and is taken away from desire, desire tries to follow the light and so gives force to the thinking. Thinking carries the light to the cerebellum and the cerebrum. The light remains in that part of the noetic atmosphere in the brain which is related to the subject of the thinking. Thinking gets light not only from heart blood but also from thoughts, yet only under certain conditions. The thought must be in the heart or the lungs, and the thinking must either be done in connection with the willing and understanding performance of a duty or must be thinking toward repudiation of the thought. Such thinking may produce two kinds of results. It may take away some of the light from the thought, weakening it, and restore the light to the mental atmosphere, or it may take away all of the light because it balances the thought. The human is not conscious of the result produced by his thinking, but the effects of the reclaimed light will be felt by him as lightness, airiness and vitality in the body and mental ease and the ability to see things more clearly. Thinking may extract some of the light that is bound in a thought while the thought is in the heart or the lungs. It does this when it disapproves of the thought, and so draws light away from it, thus limiting and retarding it. Thinking may also take all the light out of a thought. When a thought has been conceived and is not yet issued, it is being gestated in the cerebellum and the cerebrum. There is a communication between the thought and the heart in which it was conceived. The thought is nourished by active and by passive thinking. If during this time the human determines to abandon the aim and the object of the thought is drawn back into the heart, and the light is separated from the desire by thinking and is returned to the mental atmosphere from the heart and lungs. Light may also be reclaimed from a thought after the thought has been issued, but before it is exteriorized. The thought has then left the head through the frontal sinuses and is in the mental atmosphere. If the human decides to abandon the aim and the object, the thought goes to the part of the mental atmosphere which is in the heart and lungs. Their thinking separates the light from the desire, and the light is transferred to the mental and the desire to the psychic atmosphere. It may be that the thought was not exteriorized as a whole, but that only the design was exteriorized wholly, partially, or in a modified form. In this case, no light is extracted. If the thought as a whole is exteriorized with the first exteriorization, all the light is extracted. Otherwise, the light is extracted when the thought is balanced, which may not be until after many exteriorizations. A thought is balanced by thinking when feeling and desire are in agreement with each other and both are in agreement with rightness and that and reason are in agreement with selfness concerning the act, object or event, which had been witnessed by I-ness. Then the thinking extracts light from the thought and transfers it to the pineal body where it is restored to the noetic atmosphere. The light can be extracted only when the thought is in the heart and lungs. In the first and second cases, the decision to abandon the aim and object sends the thought there. In the third case, when the thought is balanced at the first exteriorization because of the mental attitude, this attitude calls it to the heart and lungs. It is different in cases which are reactions to results of the law of thought. There the balancing is done at a time when a thought cycle has brought the thought back to the heart and lungs for balancing, or when circumstances like mental associations, memories or an event cause the thought to be drawn suddenly into the heart and lungs, or when an abstract subject is thought of, such as destiny, living forever, service, or being conscious of the desire for self-knowledge. Then something affects the heart and lungs and compels the human to question. This probing and searching is the beginning of the third stage of voluntary reclamation, which is intentional and knowing. Sometimes the searcher finds what he looks for, sometimes he discovers what he did not expect. His thinking opens up the thought, and by the light it uses and the light that is in the thought, shows him the feelings and desires in the thought as they truly are. When he acknowledges these to be as the light shows that they are, and determines that he will make them as they should be, the light of that thought goes with the light in the mental atmosphere to the pineal body and is thence transferred to the noetic atmosphere, and the thought is balanced. The third stage of the reclamation of light which has come into the body from nature is the recovery of the light due to knowledge gained in the previous two stages. This knowledge is that he should not by his thinking attach himself to anything or attach anything to himself. The third stage is reached when a human applies this knowledge in his living. As he continues, encumbrances and interferences fall gradually away. He acquires confidence in action, strength in purpose, penetration in looking at a thing or a condition. Neither friends nor strangers influence him. Money, possessions and attainments cease to have attraction for him. He eats and drinks what will keep his body in health. He enjoys his food although he does not eat for the pleasure of eating. He is not bitter or sour any more than he is a hedonist. He attends to his occupations because they are his work. But all his effort in whatever he thinks or does or omits is to reclaim light and not to bind it up again. With such a one, too, the automatic reclamation works better and is more effective than with one who knows or cares nothing about it. The voluntary reclamation is based on a more steady desire which controls all other desires, and on a mental set to reclaim light, intentionally and intelligently. Thoughts that are balanced are one of two main sources of the light that is reclaimed, although this is not known to the one who balances them and so obtains the light that was in them. The other source is light that is carried by a lunar germ into the head. The automatic protection of a lunar germ ends when it has come up as high as the left kidney, and the germ is lost, usually through sexual occupations, after the psychic breath has taken off some light automatically. It may, however, be raised along the spinal cord in the region of the dorsal and the cervical vertebrae until it reaches the midbrain. There it arrives as a physically matured germ, and can, when united with seed or soil, be used in the generation of a physical body, superior in health and strength to those that crowd the world. However, if it is preserved, it will unite with the next monthly germ which merges into it. Then it will descend and make a second round through the body, being automatically protected up to the left kidney. It will, if it is not lost, arrive at the head for the second time, at the end of the second lunar month, strengthened by additional light it has gathered. 19. Retention of the lunar germ. Thinking in Destiny, Noetic Destiny. 19. Retention of the lunar germ. While it is possible for one who has developed a lunar germ of higher degrees, that is, one carried for 2, 3 or 4 months, to beget a body in which a doer more perfect than those in the bodies of the run of human beings may enter, and while indeed there have been men on the earth who were born from seeds containing lunar germs preserved for many lunations, it is also possible to retain the lunar germ into which the subsequent monthly lunar germs have merged, for the regeneration of the body, for self-impregnation and for the building of 3 inner bodies, in which the 3 parts of the triune self will live also in the form, life, and light worlds. When all of the subsequent lunar germs have been merged with the first, there is a divine conception in the head, because of the presence of the solar germ. The solar germ is a portion of the doer and it represents the triune self, and has with it some of the clear light. It has no body of nature matter, such as the lunar germ has. There is only one solar germ for each life, though the germ renews itself every year. It appears at puberty, in the pituitary body and descends in the right side of the spinal cord until, after about 6 months, it reaches the end of the cord proper at about the first lumbar vertebra, Fig. 6a, d. Then it turns and ascends in the left side, during about 6 months, and arrives at the pineal body. While it is in the head it renews itself and then starts on the next descent. It continues this through life. At the death of the body it becomes again one with the doer. The solar germ by its journeys south and north in the spinal cord, patrols the way. It keeps open the dwelling place of the triune self, while the 3 parts of the triune self, as at present, do not dwell in the spinal cord. With the run of human beings, the solar germ does nothing more. Its potential activities depend upon the presence of a lunar germ in its field of operation. Every lunar germ must pass the solar germ at least once a year, that is, while the lunar germ is going down. With the run of human beings it does not pass the solar germ a second time. 20 Divine, or Immaculate, Conception in the Head. Thinking in Destiny Noetic Destiny 20 Divine, or Immaculate, Conception in the Head. If a lunar germ is not lost, but on the return path to the head rises higher than the station at the lumbar vertebrae where the psychic breath takes off light in the course of the automatic reclamation, it is near the path of the solar germ and within the field of its influence. The solar germ then assists the lunar germ, by giving it strength as well as a push or pull upwards. If a lunar germ is preserved so as to make the second round it receives additional assistance. So it is in each succeeding round. When a lunar germ has completed 13 rounds within 12 months, having of course with it the 12 successive monthly germs which have merged into it, and having the light it received each time it passed the solar germ, and returns to the head, it is met there by the solar germ and receives light from it. With that light is a direct ray of light of the intelligence. This is a self-impregnation or divine, immaculate, virgin conception, and from it begins the rebuilding of the physical body into an immortal physical body. With the rebuilding of the body is achieved the reclamation of all light that has gone into and was outstanding in nature. Reclamation of all the light cannot be accomplished except in a rebuilt physical body. In the measure that a human reclaims light he becomes conscious of the light in him, and with that conscious of himself as the doer. The rebuilding is begun by the lunar germ which has been preserved during 13 lunations. It is accomplished when the body is 2-columned and sexless. Not until then can all the light from nature be reclaimed, and even then some light and thoughts will still be outstanding. Human beings living in 1-columned bodies cannot reclaim all the outstanding light because such bodies have not the necessary organization. The only indication in any school or tradition of a rebuilding of the physical body into an immortal body is found in the Masonic teachings about Hiram Abiff, which is the lunar germ, about the broken column, which refers to the part missing below the sternum, Fig. 6e, and about the temple not made with hands, eternal in the heavens, which is the rebuilt, regenerated physical body. 21 Origins of Christianity Thinking and Destiny Noetic Destiny 21 Origins of Christianity. It is likely that about the time the Christian teachings originated, one man had succeeded in retaining a lunar germ for 13 lunations, had consequently reclaimed light and had become conscious of and as the light of his triune self, his Father in heaven. They could have given out teachings of how others could achieve this result. This event probably occurred at a time when a lesser cycle swung in, when men's thoughts were stirred by Greek philosophy, doubt and dissatisfaction, when men were expecting something new and were made to prepare an atmosphere for its appearance. Christianity. 22 3 Degrees of Light from Intelligences. Thinking in Destiny Noetic Destiny 22 3 Degrees of Light from Intelligences. There are 3 degrees of the light of intelligences. Light which is in nature. Light which has been reclaimed from nature, has come back into the mental or noetic atmosphere of the human and is unattached. And, freed light. In the third stage of reclamation, a human reclaims light from thoughts and from lunar germs that are preserved until they arrive in the head. Light which has been reclaimed and is for the time unattached is not freed, but it must be freed. Reclaimed light may go out again into nature and it may again be bound in thoughts and exteriorized. Desire and nature matter can attach themselves to light even though it has been reclaimed many times. Light does not attach itself to matter, nature matter attaches itself to the light through desire. Only when light has become unattachable, so that no matter either of nature or of the atmospheres of the doer can attach itself to it, is it freed. It does not become unattachable by anything the light itself does, but by the thinking of the doer to which it is loaned. It becomes unattachable when there is no claim made on it by the doer. This is the case when the doer has no desire for anything in nature, and when it has knowledge of itself and of the light. Then the unattachable light is freed light and is ready to be restored to the triune self. But it is not restored until the doer has perfected itself and its body. Light that has been in circulation in the body but a few days has not the same power as light that has been carried by a lunar germ for one lunation. After light has been reclaimed voluntarily from a lunar germ, the light that it gathers the next time is itself brighter and of higher potency, and increases the clarity and power of the first reclamation. Light that is reclaimed has still attached to it adhesions of desires, which are the hooks by which nature can again lay hold of the light. An adhesion changes when another kind of desire takes the place of the first. As long as there are such adhesions, they are obstacles which dim and qualify the light. As long as there are such qualifications which go with reclaimed light, nature can get the light out again through feeling and desire that cause thinking. Yet through all this the light is never anything but light, just as gold is gold, no matter what else is mixed with it. When a man knows enough not to attach himself to anything or to attach anything to himself, he begins to free light. His thinking and his actions free it, though he does not know what the light is or that he is freeing it as such. His past thoughts, which are his destiny, bring him into all manner of conditions, which will afford him the opportunity, as a duty, to reclaim and free light. He is working out and balancing old thoughts while they are exteriorized as his destiny. So he is working off his old destiny and is not creating new thoughts, new destiny. The thinking by which he balances his thoughts is thinking that does not create thoughts. His thinking is done with greater power and with more accuracy, because he is thinking with clearer light and can turn and hold that light on the subject of his thinking. The light in the mental atmosphere becomes clearer and clearer as he uses the reclaimed light, and by that use removes the adhesions of desires and of nature. As his duties to the world are performed and no others are contracted, his thinking takes him into higher realms, not connected with the world. These are the things with which his thinking is then concerned. It may extend for lives. Eventually he knows himself, not as a human being, but as the doer. This he does by the freed, the unattachable light. He discovers the light and knows it to be the light apart from him and that it belongs to the intelligence. He may have known about this long before, intellectually, but now he knows it as it actually is, as the reality in his case. When he attains to perfection as a doer, he knows that there is a potential light in him and that as soon as he evokes it and makes it an actual light, he will become an intelligence. Feeling and desire and rightness and reason are ready to have I-ness become the light faculty, and selfness the I am faculty of what he will be as an intelligence. But before the triune self can evoke its own potential light, it must restore to the parent intelligence all the light it has received and that it has freed. What of nature when all doers have redeemed and freed their light? How is nature kept going when it no longer finds means in human desire to draw light of intelligences into it? The units of nature will then have been so changed by the progress of the human beings, that the light extending from the triune selves will penetrate nature and will affect the units without being bound with them. There will not be any such animals as there are now, because there will not be any uncontrolled desires. The plants will have different forms, in which to afford nature units the means to go through the stages of the vegetable kingdom. There will be animals, but no human desires will animate them. The animals, while having flesh tissues, will be inhabited by advanced units as elementals, and none will be ferocious. In such time man will no longer be merely a human being. He will be conscious as a doer. He will think without creating thoughts. He will have a physical body which will be immortal. It will be made of the four states of matter of the physical plane, but it will differ from the perishable bodies of present humans in that the compositor units will be balanced and be no longer active-passive or passive-active. The food will be taken directly from the elements and not through an alimentary canal, and the cells will be renewed by essential life. 23 bodies for the doer, the thinker, and the knower. Thinking in Destiny, Noetic Destiny, 23 bodies for the doer, the thinker, and the knower. The triune self will then have 3 inner bodies, in which will be its 3 parts. The doer will have absorbed its psychic atmosphere and will be in a form body made of the matter of the form world and in contact with it, Fig. EVB.A. The thinker will have absorbed its mental atmosphere and will be in a life body of and in contact with matter of the life world. The knower will have absorbed its noetic atmosphere and will be in a light body of and in contact with matter of the light world, and the 3 will be in the immortal, perfect, sexless, physical body. The import of this may be understood if it be remembered that not even the doer can now enter completely into a present human body, but that only a small portion of the doer does so, and that this portion is not in its proper place, and that the physical body contacts and operates through that matter only which is in the solid state of the physical plane. These 3 inner bodies for the triune self will then have been built in or through the physical body when it has been reconstructed after the self-impregnation and the divine conception in the head. The rebuilding puts the physical body into contact with the 4 worlds and their forces, and so makes possible a development of the 3 bodies for the parts of the triune self. These 3 bodies are developed after the lunar germ begins to ascend the central canal of the spinal cord, which it can do only after the physical body has been rebuilt. The 4 senses are then still elemental beings, but they differ from the 4 senses of a human in that they are in touch with all grades of matter in the 4 worlds, whereas in a human they are in touch only with the lowest grade of matter on the lowest plane of the lowest world. They differ also in that they then work through perfect organs which do not limit the action of the doer. The breath form then obeys the orders of the doer and experiences no resistance from nature. The triune self is then a triune self complete. It knows its relation to other triune selves and sees the common bond among all triune selves. The common bond is the noetic world. What one triune self has and is and knows is therein open to the use and service of all other triune selves. The freeing and restoring of the light of the intelligence and the transition of the triune self into an intelligence seem to be the foundation of the various traditions of the perfection which a human being eventually will reach. The thinker determines, according to the knower of the triune self, how much of the light it can let into the mental atmosphere of the human, Fig. EVB. Ines sends the amount allowed into the mental atmosphere. The light passes through Ines into the mental atmosphere where it becomes available to thinking according to one's capacity to use it. Physically, the light comes from the pineal body, which selfness contacts, to the pituitary body, which Ines contacts, and thence goes diffused and dimmed to the brain, the spine, and the heart and lungs where it is used in thinking. Some few people have light from beyond the noetic atmosphere of the human. They are the ones who have an understanding of and an insight into the things affecting human life, which exceeds that of the run of human beings. To them is available some of the self-knowledge not acquired in the present life, but in better times when the human beings were incomparably greater than today. Such people are enlightened on things which are of little interest or are unknown to the majority. But the noetic destiny of the run of human beings is that they are hindered by the lack of light and the inability to reach it or to draw it. They fear the light. They have no light except what automatic reclamation saves for them, so that they can barely go on as human beings. They are in a noetic night and have been so for thousands of years. They are unable to reach the knowledge which has been acquired by their doers in the past. They do not acquire self-knowledge, that is, knowledge of the conscious self in the body, from their experiences in their present life. Their noble noetic inheritance has been lost, is unknown and will be unattainable until they husband the light, preserve the light and reclaim consciously some of the light they have let go into nature and so bring more light into their noetic atmospheres. Their noetic powers are degraded to sexual indulgences. They have lost the ability to use noetic powers for noetic ends. Their mental atmosphere, instead of being full of light, is like a gray fog. The light is dimmed, diffused, scattered, and full of intervening obstacles. The light has too many accretions, is too scarce. In thinking, they find difficulties in focusing and in working with this sort of light. That which does work is weak, impeded, ineffective. Such human beings are not conscious of reason and not conscious of rightness. They are not conscious of their thinking or of how it is done. Their thinking is haphazard, jumpy. It is limited to physical and to psychic things, and even these it does not encompass or penetrate. Man's great intellectual attainments in natural science, engineering, literature are concerned with things of the four senses and serve nature. They are due to the thinking with only one of the three minds which he might use. The mind he uses is the sense mind or body mind. This leaves him sense-bound and nature-bound. It does not aid him in gaining self-knowledge, which would solve all problems. The body mind cannot think of the doer, it cannot think beyond nature. Its thinking is subordinated to the body senses, which are controlled by nature. The character of human beings is often marked by dishonesty, greed, meanness, immorality, and the love of intoxicating drinks. Their feelings are entirely controlled by nature, which they worship and obey. Nature is interpreted to them by the four senses, which are nature's priests and hold the feelings and desires. The strongest of the senses is the sense of smell, which is touch. Touch, contact, is the action of this sense in the body, and the most desired contact is sexual. Hence the waste of light through the sex organs. The noetic destiny, this noetic darkness, causes the run of human beings to be born from seed and from soil which had not sufficiently matured and which are produced in unhealthy bodies. To produce a proper human body, the seed and the soil must each have been carried in chastity for 12 months. During that time the seed and the soil have been turned into the tonic tincture and have been worked over and reabsorbed in the body. It vitalizes the body and gives it power to resist disease. Any woman who loses ova monthly cannot bear a perfect child. Abstinence in thought and act will change the female so that during the monthly periods no ova are lost. They, the ova, will be reabsorbed and do for the female body somewhat as the seminal power or tincture will do for the male. When man and wife are in this condition, they may have a healthy child that will be immune to disease. In any case, a woman should be left alone during pregnancy, during the nursing period and, thereafter, for 7 days before and after menstruation. When man and woman understand what they as doers really are, they will not have intercourse, unless both husband and wife want a child, that they are willing to have a child is not sufficient. It is partly because of a violation of these fundamental rules and because bodies are often produced from seed which may be only a few hours old, that the run of human beings have the kinds of weak bodies that crowd the world and are prone to disease. The man must himself preserve the lunar germs, as well as his seed. If he does not preserve his seed, he cannot preserve the lunar germ, which will be lost after the 2nd week. The simple precepts of chastity and decency are all that is required as subjects of thinking and rules of conduct, in order to save the lunar germ and the seed. The age-old and always new revelations, books, mystic teachings, cults, brotherhoods and sisterhoods that present love and sex as anything else than matters of chastity and decency, are blinds for corruption. They have helped to bring on the noetic night. In these weak bodies, disease is often developed by food. The run of human beings know and care little for the science of food. They usually eat too much, they take too large a load to carry, more than the body can digest or absorb. They eat much that is indigestible or incompatible. Hence the foods which they eat ferment and putrefy, and this commonly deranges the digestive functions and produces poisons, which are frequently the causes of disease. The object of their eating is principally to gratify the craving of the palate or to have the comfortable feeling of fullness. The feelings that they want are swarms of elementals which get into the body and its organs and pull, prod, drive, fret the nerves and are felt as sensations by the doer. Health or disease of the body is immaterial to the elementals. When disease follows decomposition, other elementals come in and thrill as the discomfort felt in the diseased parts. Upon this basis of sex and food, human beings have built up a false civilization with useless occupations, false standards, insufficient or excessive rewards, lawlessness, crimes, childish religions and ignorance of true and honest government. Because of the noetic darkness, the run of human beings have conceptions of life and responsibility which are infantile. Their problems concerning free will and destiny, God, good and evil and their relations with other human beings, their own makeup, their future and the object of life show the limitations of their thinking and conceptions, which are imposed by the absence of the light. 24. Free will. Thinking and Destiny. Noetic Destiny. 24. Free will. Free will is a phrase for one's freedom to feel, to desire, to think, or to act, as opposed to the inescapable necessity to feel, to desire, to think, or to act, in a given way. It means the absence of prevention, restraint and compulsion that would interfere with physical, psychic and mental action and inaction. The phrase means that one can feel, desire and think and do as he pleases, and not be limited by bounds or coerced by goads. Not only in this phrase, but in the language generally, the word will is used as if it were different from what is called desire. But so-called will is an aspect of the active side of the doer in the body, which is desire, nothing more than that. Will is one of the four functions of desire. Desire, which is conscious power, has four functions: to be, to will, to do, and to have. To will is the second function of desire. It is followed by to do, and to have. Will is that one desire which controls the other desires, be it for the moment or for a long period. It controls to the degree that it can. Use the conscious power which desire is. It gets strength by exercise, that is, by long continued desiring. It lasts until its object is attained or until it is overcome by a stronger desire, which is then the will. The cause or starter of will is immediately feeling and remotely unsatisfied desire, which is ultimately the longing for perfection and to be perfect. Will manifests by a surging up out of the inner depths, of a desire to attain an end. This manifestation may last for years. Will is weakened by the interference of contrary desires, and it is strengthened by continued exercise and by overcoming and compelling other desires. Will is not free, cannot be free, it is much conditioned at all times. Each desire is will, but that desire is to be designated as will which at any time controls the opposing desire. One of the desires as will does not always control the other desires. At no time has a human freedom of will, even though there be no physical obstacles to the actions, desires, and thinking. A human has a limited amount of freedom to will. He has set the limitations. In so far as he himself has not prevented himself from acting, desiring and thinking, he is free to act, to desire, to think. All his bonds, obstacles or limitations are of his own making, but he is free to remove them when he wills. As long as he has not exercised that freedom, they remain and they limit. He has made them by creating thoughts, and the only way to remove them is by thinking without creating other thoughts. Past thoughts are exteriorized in the physical body and mark the limitations of the body, which are also limitations to the will. These physical limitations extend to the time when life begins, the race, the country and the nationality, the kind of family in which the body is born, the sex, the kind of body, the physical heredity, the chief mundane occupations, particular diseases, some accidents, the critical events in life and the time and nature of death. The limitations which a person has made extend to his disposition, temperament, inclinations, moods and appetites, which are part of his psychic nature, and to his insight, comprehension, reasoning and other mental endowments or the absence of them. 25. The problem of free will. Thinking and Destiny. Noetic Destiny. 25. The problem of free will. The limitations which are obvious, and therefore principally the physical limitations, are what people call destiny or foreordination. Because people limit themselves in their perceptions and conceptions and so are ignorant of the cause of these trammels, they speculate, and they attribute them to God and divine providence or to chance. All this is their problem, our problem, of free will. It will remain an unsolvable problem as long as men are ignorant of their own nature and of their relations to what they suppose to be an extraneous deity. That which limits their free will and determines when their destiny shall be precipitated is no extraneous being, but is the thinker of each one's own triune self. A human is always free to consent or to object to the conditions in which he is, including his psychic and mental conditions. Even if one of his numerous desires forces him to act, he can register agreement or objection. He is free to agree or object, and this is due to another desire. His free will centers around this point of freedom, the only freedom he has. The point of freedom is the desire he lets rule. This desire is a psychic thing. In the beginning it is only a point. Every human has such a point of freedom and can by thinking extend the point to an area of free will. Originally desire was undivided. That was when the doer as feeling and desire was with and conscious of the thinker and the knower as the triune self. The desire of the doer was for self-knowledge, which was desire for its completion with the triune self. Then came the time when feeling and desire appeared to separate and be in two bodies, desire in the man body and feeling in the woman body. Of course there could be no real separation of feeling from desire, but that was what the use of the body-mind showed when the doer began to think with the body-mind through the senses. Its thinking caused the doer to see feeling and desire in bodies apart from each other and caused an apparent but not a real division, because there can be no desire without feeling nor can there be feeling without desire. Feeling and desire were in the woman body, but feeling dominated desire. Also, desire and feeling were in the man body, but desire dominated feeling. Continued thinking with the body-mind prevailed and caused the desire for sex to separate from the desire for self-knowledge. So the desire for sex exiled itself from the conscious light in the triune self, and into the darkness of the senses. Thus the doer lost the free use of the conscious light to make known to it its relation to its thinker and knower. The desire for sex was thus separated from the desire for self-knowledge. The desire for self-knowledge has never changed and can never be made to change. That desire for self-knowledge still persists with the human. But the desire for sex has continued to divide and to multiply into innumerable desires. The multitude of desires are all marshaled and arranged under the generalship of the four senses. They attach themselves to objects of one or another of the four senses, for the direct or remote purpose of gratifying or ministering to or serving their chief desire, the desire for sex. All these desires are attached, they have attached themselves, they are not free. Yet they have the right and the power to remain attached or to free themselves from the things to which they are attached. No one desire, nor the combined desires of all other powers can compel the least of the desires to change itself. Each desire has the right and is the power to change itself, and to do or be what it will of itself desire to do or to be. That desire may be dominated by a stronger desire, but it cannot be made to change or to do or be anything until it itself wills to change and do or be. In that right and power is constituted its own free will. The only desire which actually and truly is free is the desire for self-knowledge, for knowledge of the triune self. It is free because it has not attached itself to anything and it wills not to be attached to anything. And because it is free it will not interfere with the right of any other desire to attach itself to anything. Therefore it is free. Not one of the innumerable other desires is free, because they all have chosen to attach themselves to the objects to which they are attached and to which they choose to remain attached. But each one has the right and it is the power to let go of that to which it is attached. And it can then attach itself to any other thing, or it can remain unattached and free from anything, as it wills. Each desire, therefore, is its own point of freedom. It remains the point, or it may extend its point to an area. The stronger desire controls the weaker and so extends its point to an area, and as it continues to control other desires it extends its area of control, and it can continue to dominate other desires until it has will or control over a vast area of its own and over the desires of other doers. And yet that dominating will is not free. It is not free because the desires it controls are not free, and they are not free if they are controlled. Because if they are free they act in accord, each by its own will, and are not controlled. The dominating desire as the will is not free merely by dominating the other desires. The test of its freedom as a point, or its extension to an area is that desire, as will, attached to anything in any way related to the senses? If it is attached, it is not free. How then does it extend its point of freedom of will to an area of will, a dominion where it controls not only its own desires but the desires of others? It wills, and it may extend its will over its other desires, by thinking. Merely by desiring no desire can extend itself so that it controls other desires. But if it is strong enough, it will compel thinking. By continued thinking the desire extends itself as will. The will is increased by exercise. It is exercised by persistence in the effort to think, persistence against and irrespective of all obstacles or interferences to thinking. By persistence in the effort to think, obstacles are overcome and interferences disappear. The more the doer continues to think, the greater will be its will over its other desires. Its power to think and to control its own desires will determine the dominion of its will over the desires of other men. Yet that overruling desire, though it has dominion over the will of others, is not really free. That desire has increased its power by its will to think, only so has its thinking increased its power to desire, to will. Each of the desires over which it has exercised its will and extended its dominion is controlled, but not changed. Each such desire will remain as it is until it wills to change itself or to change other things. And the only means that any desire has of changing itself is by thinking to accomplish what it wills. Every desire wants knowledge of how to get or to be what it wants to have or to be. The many desires continue to desire, but they do not think. If they will not think, they are controlled by a dominating desire that does think. And because the desire that does think refuses to think about what it is and why it is attached to things away from itself, it attaches itself to objects that it does not continue to want after it is attached. When it tires of one thing it changes to another and is never satisfied. The reason that it is never satisfied and never can be satisfied with any of its attachments is that it has lost parts of itself, and it is dimly conscious that it is lost to them. And it will not and cannot be satisfied until all the desires of the original desire are again one undivided desire. Therefore, as it is afraid or refuses to think about itself, it attaches itself to this thing and that thing in the hope that it has at last found a part of itself that has been lost. But no thing to which it can be attached can also be a part of itself. And even when a desire does think, it will not think about itself. Why? Because if it really has made the attempt, it finds that as soon as it tries to think about what it is or who it is, it must let go of the objects to which it is attached. Then the effort tires it, or it is afraid of being lost if it lets go of sights and sounds. Why does this happen? It happens because from the earliest years it has been taught to use the mind of the senses, the body mind. The body mind can think only about the senses and the objects or things related to the senses. It cannot think about desire or about feeling except in the terms of the senses. To think about feeling or about desire exclusive of the senses, the body-mind must be made inactive, stilled. If or when desire makes an effort to think about itself, it must be a long and persistent effort, and the effort must be repeated again and again, because that effort is calling into action the desire mind which has been dormant, inactive, except when moved by the body mind which then draws on it for more light in its thinking. It would be too much to expect either feeling or desire to use the feeling mind or the desire mind to exclude the body mind from their thinking. Therefore, when one desire would think about itself, let it think about itself in relation to the thing to which it is attached. With persistence, the thinking will show to that desire what that thing is. As soon as the desire is conscious of what that thing is, the desire knows that that thing is not what it wants. It will let go, and never again will it attach itself, nor can it be attached to that thing. That desire is then free from that thing. Now, what happened during the thinking to free it from its attachment? Thinking is the steady holding of the conscious light within on the subject of the thinking. By thinking with the body-mind only, the body-mind can show by its light what the senses show the thing to be. That light does not and cannot show what things really are. But when a desire turns its thinking on itself in relation to the thing which it wants, then the desire mind and the feeling mind focus the conscious light on that desire and on the thing which the desire wants or to which it is attached. And the desire at once lets go and refuses ever again to be attached, because that desire then knows that it does not want that thing. The doer in a human for whom certain things have no attraction, has been freed from the attachments of its desires to those things by this process of thinking in a former existence. But the desires which have freed themselves may attach themselves to other things, ****. How then, can the desire that frees itself from one thing remain free from all other things? This is indeed important. It is done in this way: when the attached desire wills and thinks about itself, it is acting on its point of freedom. It is thinking to know what it is and what its relation is to the thing of its attachment. It desires to know. Very well. Then let it identify itself as the desire to know the thing of its attachment. And let it at the same time relate itself in thinking to its other desire, the desire for self-knowledge. Let the desire to know then persist in thinking on the thing of its attachment and its relation to the desire for self-knowledge, until the conscious light is focused on the thing of its attachment. As soon as the conscious light shows that thing as it is, the desire knows it and knows that it is free. Then the free desire will think of the desire for self-knowledge and will relate itself or at once identify itself with or as the desire for self-knowledge. When this is done, the human in whom that desire is has an acceleration of joyous life and experiences a new sense of freedom. When the point of freedom has identified itself with or as the desire for self-knowledge, there is an area of free will, and by alike freeing its other desires from their attachments, the area can be extended to include all the noetic atmosphere of the human. At present, human beings have only the point of freedom; they do not extend it to an area of free will. Free will be a problem until men understand that a human is a human being of a doer and that the doer is an integral but imperfect part of an otherwise perfect and immortal triune self. Free will is closely related to noetic destiny. The doer, from the depth or heights of its own inner self, projects a portion of itself into a flesh body which moves among other flesh bodies in an objective world. The bodies are moved around by the four senses, which also belong to nature. The four senses are attracted or repelled by objects of nature. Chief among these objects are other flesh bodies. The four senses, which are elementals, nature units, impersoned in a body and harnessed into its systems and organs, play upon the feelings of the impersoned portion of the doer and produce the illusions that the doer is the senses. That feeling is a fifth sense, that the body is the doer, that the doer is nothing if it is not connected with a person or body, that the senses are the test for reality, and that what the senses do not perceive is non-existent. The four senses surround with glamour the other flesh bodies, which then excite love and hate, greed and cruelty, pride and ambition. The four senses intensify the hunger for food, which is the hunger of nature for circulation. The four senses do not show to the doer nature as it really is, they hide nature and cast a glamour over it. The human is thus in ignorance of his real nature, of the organization of which he is a part, of his makeup, of his origin and of his destiny. In a human the essential thing is the doer portion, feeling and desire, which are projected periodically from the doer part of the triune self into a flesh body for a life on the earth crust. The doer in the human extends to the innermost of nature, and beyond nature to the knower, and to the intelligence. Feeling and desire are the essentials of the human on earth, they persist after the death of the body and through the life of another and other bodies. The succession of the human beings of a doer constitute the 12 portions of the doer, and the entire doer is one of the 3 parts of the triune self. One life on earth is a part of a series, as one paragraph in a book, as one step in a procession, or as one day in a life. The notion of chance and that of a single life on earth are 2 of the outstanding errors of human beings. The human sees only an outer aspect of a small section of the history of the doer, as presented in the life of that human. He does not see connections which, if he saw them, would appear as producing causes of what the cross-section shows. Therefore he is without an explanation of what he sees and feels as the physical, psychic and mental limitations of his being, and so he uses such terms as chance, accident, and providence to account for the mystery. But this question will cease to be troublesome when man knows more about himself and understands that his destiny is in his own hands.